Citizen access, calling, taking, dispatching, pre-arrival instructions, coordination, incident reporting, EMS unit to hospital position, transfer, communications to other agencies, hospital, and communication networks. Okay. Detection, citizen access, and communication between the party needing help and to the dispatch. This is basically, again, 911, or actually what they refer to now is E911. Initially, 911 was just, hey, we got your emergency, where are you, kind of thing. E911 sits there and says, okay, well, wherever you're calling, per se, this is what your address is. And I think even now they're trying to get to, if you call from a cell phone, wait a minute, we're going to triangulate you, at least get within like 50 feet of where you are. 311 is kind of like the more non-emergency-ish. If some places have it, some places don't. PSAPs, basically a PSAP is kind of like a dispatch center. That's really what a PSAP is, you know, or whoever that dispatch center is. Like for Austin, Austin has a place what they call CTEC, and they've got police, fire, EMS, county, sheriff's department, city bus. Everybody and their brother is all in one giant building. So anytime a call comes in fact, even like with bigger cities, the bigger cities, when you call, they'll sit there and say, what's your emergency? Police, fire, EMS, and that's actually your first tier in dispatching. Then they kick you to whoever's appropriate. Then whoever, let's say, you know, you call for EMS and they're talking, listening. It's like, wait a minute, sounds like a domestic involved. The computer automatically will send it to PD. So everybody's more or less interlinked with each other. CAD stands for computer aided dispatching. The whole idea of this is that when you call, you know, for example, and call taker's getting information, or the computer's actually getting where you are, it's actually sending it to another computer, and saying, okay, well, where's our quickest, most available, fastest unit that can get there? The lines are recorded. A lot of it's for legal purposes, QI, QA. And ideally, they're trying to get as much essential information they can about what it is the emergency is. And if we know what it is, we know who to send. You know, bigger areas like with Austin, you can call 911 and you may get an ambulance non-emergent, depending on how the information they get from you. Or you might get the whole cavalry. It just depends. You go like Williamson County here, you just get the whole cavalry. So just understand the bigger areas, they can't just sit there and flood resources like that to every person. They're going to kind of triage it out as much as they can. And again, like I said, alert the appropriate responders to the scene. And like I said, this could be city, county, you know, private agencies. And like certain industrial complexes, they have their own rapid response teams. They'll try to organize something with that. So ideally, this is what happens. You know, you call, we have the call taker. Call taker sitting in here. This computer gets linked, gets sent over here. And while she's typing all this information, is showing up over here. And we're looking at who can we send. Usually it's a giant map, and you see the little trucks, and it'll sit there and list out who's closest and who can make the quickest response times. And the thing else that take into consideration is if you are in an area where they have base stations. Because they'll sit there and say, well, we have to take in, you know, it may take you about a minute or so to actually get in the truck, but there may be somebody about 5 blocks down or further away, but they're already in the truck. They're going to make up that time a lot easier. So they take a lot of that stuff into consideration. Thing with E911, we have the ALI, automatic location indicator. This is actually very, very old, by the way. This is the there's actually two kinds. They called the MDTs, motor data terminals, and now they have the MDCs, mobile data computers. These are like the real, I mean, like Atari DOS based. I mean, they were ridiculous. And anyway, the idea is that we're going to, you know, you want to talk about some limited technology. A lot of the new CADs will actually take consideration where you are and consideration where the street, which are the one-ways, which are not, and say, okay, you can loop, this one can loop here. That wouldn't even do that. They'd sit there and say, okay, well, you're here, calls here, we're just going to make a straight line. Even though you might have to actually go around, that CAD that would only sit there and say, you just go straight line, you're closest. So the dispatcher would kind of have to override that. So ANI, automatic number locator, again, here's your numbers. Where are you in the world? So, priority dispatch. Call taker interrogates caller, usually medically approved questions. This is actually from something from an individual named Dr. Jeff Clausen. And you'll see here in a picture of like a little flip chart of what it is that they kind of go through here. Everybody will kind of take this flip chart and kind of tailor make it to whatever their system needs. But anyway, you call in. In fact, here's a perfect example. This is always interesting. You call in, you sit there and say, I mean, this is a true call, by the way. You get called in for a, you call in because for whatever reason you cut your thumb. Okay, you call 911, you cut your thumb, right? Cut your thumb, they sit there and ask you these questions like, is your thumb bleeding, is it under control, this, that, and the other. Are you having any irregular breathing? Somebody says, well, yeah, you know, because you're hyperventilating. That would actually upgrade the response. So yeah, that was actually a call of mine. We were kind of like looking at this, and I remember the fire department was like, what? And we're like, don't worry about it, we got it. Just stay home. So that's a kind of the downside with it. The idea is it reduces the unnecessary response. The more you get emergency vehicles running out there, the higher the probability of an accident, and they want to avoid that. And like I said, we just want to get the appropriate vehicles out there because, I mean, rolling out trucks, especially in a municipality, it costs money. So if we cannot roll out those trucks, we start saving money, you know, preventative maintenance, you know, any kind of wear and tear issues. And, you know, for city budgets, that's very, very, very important. So here's a little flip chart. And usually you'll have like, when you look down here is actually what, like, you know, I'm complaining of a headache. So they'll flip over to headache. Then they'll just start asking these questions. Down, 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 down. And then it says like, you know, the worse it gets, like usually if it's alpha response, it's no big deal. If it's Bravo, okay, we got a little bit of problem. The Charlies and Deltas were like, okay, things are going really bad. And at the same time, they also want to try and give pre-arrival instructions. 90% of the time, pre-arrival instruction was, don't move the patient. You know, or the other one was start CPR or just do compressions. But you wouldn't hear much more than that. They say, just don't move the patient, kind of a thing.
When my daughter broke her arm, the dispatcher said, don't try to set it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised because
her bones are like down here.
Yeah, no, people will never underestimate people. What's scary is those kind of directions are in there for a reason because somebody, you know, it's like, wait a minute, kind of a deal. I mean, I think the funnier ones was, you know, such and such refuses to do CPR on patient would be like, you'd hear something like that. And then you'd hear, or actually, this was one of those. Patient shot himself in the face with a shotgun. Bystander refuses to do CPR, doesn't want to do mouth to mouth. It's like, yeah, good job. Why are you advising to do this? And this is like before the, you know, do compressions first deal. You know, we got to do that. The guy's like, no, I'm not doing that. And the guy's like, good job. I wouldn't put my mouth on all that blood and God knows what else. So again, it's not a perfect system. It's just trying to make a little bit more organization versus get a phone call. Let's just send everybody and their brother out there. Call coordinating and incident reporting. Ideally, is we want to update information en route. Generally, what it is just updating information en route is a lot of it's safe. Big ones you got to worry about is safety concerns. I mean, generally, you should be going into every call with all your equipment and being prepared for anything to happen. I mean, you could have somebody come in and says, yeah, I'm complaining of difficulty breathing. You come walking in, it turns into a cardiac arrest. Yes, it's nice to kind of sit there and say, yes, it's nice to know there's a you know, CPR in progress. But, you know, big thing with there is like, especially traffic information, mass casualty incidents. I mean, you might get put on a very just different channel with a specific dispatcher, and you're there and all they're doing is talking to you and saying, okay, responding units, you need to come in from this road, from this access point because there might be blocked or some kind of other hazard out there. Assistance with mechanical navigation problems. Ideally, good dispatchers know their city. They should really know their city. And because, I mean, you can show a nice big computer even with all the maps and everything, but you know, ideally you want to be able to sit there and say, okay, I know where you are, I know where you're stuck. Okay, go up here and make, you know, go down 2 blocks, make a right, 1 block on the left, you'll be there. Especially in the middle of the night, because some places are just not lit. They're just not lit at all. You have no idea what kind of neighborhood you're driving, especially in county areas. I mean, have you guys ever gotten in county, something's just dirt road and dirt road, you know, so, and ideally with, you know, if they have, you know, good, the AVLI or /GPS, they should be watching you and say, okay, this is going to come up in about, within so many feet or a quarter of a mile. You're going to see, just be careful, dirt roads coming up, and you need to take a right on there. Immediate assistance from police, fire, and highway department. Yeah, that's a very important thing to have. So they say, hey, I need PD code 3 now, or if it's a traffic issue, it's like, hey, I need police for traffic control, whatever the case may be. Again, like I said, it's just getting more resources there. Incident tracking, like I said, they kind of keep their own QI, QA, and like I said, they record that, and like I said, all that data going into the computer is getting saved as well. So they can kind of look back at that if they want to do random QAs, or, for example, they dispatch you to, lady complaining of chest pain, and for whatever reason they decide to send one ambulance non-emergent. Yeah, that was a. So again, all that's information's there that's recorded, and they can see the whole timeline that goes with it. And that's another thing, especially especially more violent calls, they always want to try and keep track of a timeline, what's being entered all the way along, because that could all end up in court. Safety, the emergency button, or sometimes referred to as Bob. Usually a lot of those handhelds will have a big orange button, Bob. And usually as soon as you hit that, it usually locks up the system on their side, and that's pretty much a nice silent way of saying, hey, I need help, things are really bad. And usually they'll try to sit there and say, are you code 4 or something along that lines, and usually you have to respond in a certain way, and if you don't, that's kind of saying, okay, things are really bad, send everybody. And usually they will. They'll send police, fire, anybody they can get their hands on to come help you out on that. System status monitoring. For systems that actually have system status, that's a nice way of saying we don't use base stations. We put you on a corner somewhere. And the idea behind system status is they want you to, if we have your truck running on a certain intersection strategically placed in the town where the more busy areas, you're going to have a quicker response time. The ironic part is there is no data or sufficient evidence to support system status that actually does anything or makes a difference. But that's the idea behind it. So, and again, record management and research tool. Again, like I said, just kind of looking at trends of who's busier. Where do you need to build a station? Where do you need to put a truck? Now we can start looking at that information, like where are little hot spots in town, things to kind of look out for, more troubled spots, and so forth. So EMS unit and hospital physician. Obviously, we want to sit there and let them know we're coming and what we're coming with. So, and that's usually, obviously, that usually goes to the charge nurse that's actually on duty. You should be generally speaking to. Online medical direction. That is basically if you need specific drug orders or something that's not in your protocol, that's not standing, or you're running into, sometimes people use them for consults of saying, hey, I'm not really sure what's going on here. I've got this, trying to get some idea what to do there. That's kind of really it with online medical control there. The version of specialized units or to facilities, bigger cities with more hospitals, they can get flooded, especially on a good weekend at nighttime. Those things, our ERs can get flooded, and they will go tap out and say, don't bring anybody here. We're done, until they can get all their patient load under control. Because they don't necessarily take in, consideration of just patients in the ER. They look at all the hospital beds. If we have all these people, if worse came to worse, can we put them in beds? And if not, we got to stop at this point. And then they start cycling them through, discharging them, and say, okay, wait a minute, we have beds again. And like I said, not just in the ER, but all the way across the board. Okay, bring people back in. The only time it really, for specialized hospitals, some hospitals may only special, like for example, BRAC in Austin is trauma level 2 trauma center. I think St. David's is a level 2 now, but when I was there, we only had one level 2 trauma center. All trauma went there regardless. However, if you were stroke, you could go to BRAC, Seton, or St. David's. Now, if you're STEMI, you can pretty much go everywhere except Seton Northwest and Seton Southwest. So you kind of had to know where to go and where not to go. And sometimes what you may not even know where to go. I mean, I remember taking a guy that had a arterial occlusion that he procrastinated calling us for about 3 hours. And he was concerned because his leg was becoming very numb to painful. And we were taking him all the way from Jonestown and hauling him to Round Rock. And keep in mind, this is before we had all, Cedar Park and Seton Wilco and all this business. And, we're, cruising along there thinking we're going to get this guy. And my partner calls in and they came back and said, you keep going. We don't have vascular on call. Or, we don't have vascular in the house. You got to go to the next hospital. So luckily they told us we could make a right down into Austin versus going down further 620 and then having to make a longer trip. So that kind of stuff is actually very, very useful to keep in mind, especially the more specialized issue. Giving report. Giving report is basically it's just telling the story. And the big thing about giving report is you want to be very organized with that. Even if you're just even giving a radio report or giving a report to a nurse or a physician, you want to give a very organized report. You don't want to say, hey, yeah, this guy's about 35, his vital signs were this, and yeah, he's complaining of chest pain, we give some nitro, but then he starts in this. You don't want to sound scattered all over. If you sound disorganized, you don't really know what you're doing, that's how we're going to think. You really don't know what you're doing. Versus like, hey, this is Ethan. He's 22. We found him downtown. He was passed out. He smelled of alcohol the entire time. We woke him up. He said he was doing a bunch of methamphetamines before paramedic class and then started having real bad chest palpitations. Now we've got a little bit of flow to it. It's like, yeah, when I've identified who he is, a lot of people actually forget that actually tell the person's name. They're like, yeah, this is a 35-year-old male or something like that.
But you're not supposed to say their name over the radio.
No, not in the radio. But
when you get there.
Yeah. Just, and it's almost like...
Maybe that's part of it, is they're kind of used to...
It depends on who teaches them and the system and what they want them to do. It depends on how their training program is to say, we want you to perform like this kind of a thing. So, actually, more interesting reports I ever had get called way out in the county in Colorado. Come out there, this, that, and the other, come walking in the door. Volunteer fire guy comes in. Or he's sitting there on one knee, he's doing his business, I kid you not, snaps his paper. 35-year-old female, da-da-da-da-da, vital signs are this. I mean, he just goes, and finally I was like, so what's the complaint? What's bothering you today, ma'am?
Wow.
So guess how much credibility I had with that guy at that point. It's like, yeah, great, you took a bunch of vital signs, you got their age, you got their meds. You don't even know why you're here, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. You want to have that organization. That's the same thing even with giving a radio report. You want to have that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. You want to give that organization, saying, hey, we're coming in non-emergent, 22-year-old male, ETOH, overdose, vital stable within normal limits, we'll be there in 5. It's like, oh, okay, now I've got a little bit of continuity to there, a little bit of flow. Supporting agencies through dispatch centers or directly to field units, depending on where you are. Sometimes you might be able to hop on the same channel they are. Big municipalities, you can usually do this. Bigger counties, you just hop on their channel, or they're hopping on yours. So everybody's talking on one channel instead of trying to actually monitor what these people are doing or what that person's doing. And sometimes other supporting agencies, which are kind of really useful, are, like City Bus, Red Cross. Somebody can get these people here over to this place for this situation. Victim services. I mean, we don't need to talk to victim services, but it's good to have our dispatch. It's like, hey, can we get victim services? They go call, relay it over to the PD's CAD and say, hey, we need victim services for this, and victim services comes out. So hospital. Direct link for medical response, patient transfers, backup link communications. A lot of times these guys will have a kind of like an online or intranet amongst each other, because they're trying to see what the diversion status is, or who's, they've got so many beds, all of a sudden they'll start changing colors like yellow, red, and then when things are bad they go black. But now they can kind of watch each other and see who's doing what, The other thing with hospital resources, if you get a really bad MCI, you may have to get there and do what they call an all-call. And you get in there and you click, and you do an all-call to all hospitals. multi-casualty incident, that gets them all listening and say, hey, look, I've got 3 Category 1 patients, I've got 5 Cat 2 patients, I've got 5 red patients, 2 green patients, da 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 da. And then it should be in succession of who can handle the worst, the least. Hey, this is BRAC. We can take all your Cat 1 patients and 2 Cat 2 patients, and the next person jumps in. Okay, we can take Cat 3 patients, and we can take 3 of your reds. So everybody knows who's going. We're all divvying up accordingly. So, and of course that lets them know it's like, wait a minute. That gives them a chance to say, well, what do we have? What can we handle at this point in time? Because they may not, who knows, they may have said, hey, look, we can like take 2 patients. Sorry, guys, we're slammed. Other communications, amateur radio, I don't know if it even does that anymore.
You see the people with the hand,
yeah,
the license plates and all that still around.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody, amateur radio was I think it was like a really low frequency. I mean, people were used to being able to talk to each other like out in Australia and all that other business. Ever since we've gotten like cell phones and became very digitized and internet, a lot of that's kind of trickled away.
I don't know, 9/11 they were using it a lot because all the cell phone lines were busy and stuff, that they actually were being used to communicate,
Yeah, I mean, that's good. That's good. Citizens band, you don't hear too much. Obviously, other networks, broadcast radio, hey, say, hey, we've got an accident here. We're, public safety announcement. We're told to avoid this area for whatever reason. Business radios, again, like I said, taxis. Sometimes, like I said, he's saying if all the cell phone lines are tapped out, find the next mode of communication that most people aren't using, CBs. So mobile communication centers. Basically, these are just RVs with a lot of radios. And usually a mobile communication center is usually kind of attached to intermixed with a command center. A good command center, you need radios because you need, especially what they're doing with a fire incident. Depending on how big the incident is, and if you have several, engine and truck companies out there, they're trying to divide it into, areas, divisions, groups, whatever it is their function is doing. They can't have all, 10 plus units all on one radio. So they sit there and say, you're designated channel 1 northeast, you're designated channel 2, you're designated channel 3. And one person is talking and listening in, and that way they can kind of make more of a tree effect going down. We can kind of branch out. So those guys in that division can talk to each other. There's one dispatch and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. They're, mission complete, this, that, what do we need of your assignment? Instant command's like, okay, tell them this is their next thing, or tell them to divide, these truck companies go here to Division 1, this other one go to Division 2, and so forth. Make sense? Following me with that? EOC, that's basically just a nice, land fixed, like I said, incident command, multi-communication area. A good EOC will have all the public agencies and whatever they need all together. Okay? They should, all the incident commanders, especially really, really big incidences, they should all be meeting there. Like, I know Austin's EOC, they got activated a couple times on real bad weather. They have those little ice storms and just the whole world shuts down. So they'll get, they'll get EMS command, they'll get PD, they'll get fire command. So they can kind of say, well, who's doing what and how do we coordinate amongst each other? And then they kind of start trickling down, strategy down to the field units, goes to tactics, and then goes to the individual units themselves. But again, same thing, a lot of command consoles. We're always trying to get up-to-date information as we go. And that's, if I see here, we rely on media, because as soon as something bad happens, they're running right out there too. They want to get as much footage as they can. So. Okay, radio cycles, just be kind of familiar with the general here, kilo, 1,000, mega, million, giga, billion, and so forth. And that's just like, if you want to get into radio, it's just the frequency cycles going 1, 2. That's all that really is. So I would be very familiar with your VHF and UHF ones, kind of within these little things. We really don't worry about your audio and sub-audio frequencies. VHF, you're very high. skip by bouncing off layers of the ionosphere, long range, and it's kind of unpredictable. These were really a lot of the original radio communication frequencies that we would use. In fact, I think it was that we had, initially EMS had 10 designated, I think it was 10 designated UHF frequencies. So that's because of the short ranges. UHF, if you want to understand, nice way to understand UHF, just think it kind of goes out and goes down like an umbrella, U for umbrella. It'll kind of bend down like that. But usually it's a short range line of sight, bounces off buildings of urban areas. And that's, like I said, that was medical communication. That, like I said, we had initially had 10 channels that were designated to EMS. Some places still use it. You actually have to call, medical communications to talk to a hospital. And like Colorado was like that. We had to use medical communications, and then they would patch us into the hospital. Versus like a lot of places, you can just go directly call it the hospital.
So it was like an old school operator that had to like patch you in and stuff?
No, it was just a regular. It was actually the phones. I actually kind of miss those. The little phones you'd click. So, but now obviously we got 800 and 900 digital megahertz. So, but here's your little UHF here, VHF, so forth. Just understand the difference between, understand what UHF, VHF is, and so forth. Here's bouncing off the ionosphere, in case you ever wondered. And very high can penetrate the ionosphere. So let's talk about my little umbrella here. Huh? Fair enough. AM and FM. AM can pretty much almost go anywhere. Everybody, by chance, listen to like Howard Stern or Rush Limbaugh? Or Howard Stern went to Cyrus or something like
Sirius,
that. Yeah, Sirius. But yeah, those guys were on AM for a long time. And it's just like I said, you can get a very wide range at that point. Very easily interfered with. In case you were listening, obviously most local radio stations will jump onto FM just because it can get a better, like I said, lack of interference at that point. So, like I said, just, the difference there. Biotelemetry, this has gone in and out of favor for quite a few years. And the big ones that they're playing with now is, do we send EKGs with ST elevation or not? Or do we rely on paramedics? Every place is going to be a little bit different. So, and just depending on what the cardiology group there or hospital or whoever it is they're dealing with, they're usually a bigger place. They try to get a general consensus. But, a lot of the, if you ever see like the old episodes of like Emergency, they'll actually like plug in the phone and they like, send the rhythm, and the doctor would be on this side reading the rhythm and tell them what to do, kind of a thing. But now it's just like, well, we got 12 leads, and ideally we want to sit there and get that information there and say, yeah, this is what it is, and let's activate the cath lab, and we can give the patient a good, rotor-rooter as they're coming in the door. Problem with this, obviously, is poor signals, lost electrodes, weak batteries, tremors. You guys will talk a lot about tremors and artifact when you get into cardiology. I know up here locally they kind of rely on camera phones and emailing it directly to the hospital. I don't know what they're doing down south anymore. I know Williamson County is very proud of the fact they have like a 96% they have a 90% success rate when it comes to reading EKGs, and they follow up on that pretty regularly. And that's one thing, if you guys decide to go work down there, you have to be able to be within that, read EKG really well. So they're at their point, they're like, we're not going to do any biotelemetry. Austin, I've seen kind of go back and forth where, well, maybe we could plug a cell phone into the, the monitor, maybe we could do this. And then they'll be like, nah, don't worry about this. And then like, well, let's do a study and see if it's actually true. And it's a city, it's politics. So, frequencies, good terms to remember, right? Simplex, basically this is, I talk one at a time. I talk, I click, I talk, I wait, you talk. Click, you wait, you talk. That's all that is, a simplex. Duplex, just think of a phone. We can both talk each other at once. A multiplex, the nice thing is I'm talking, you're talking, and we can be arguing, but I can at least sending you an EKG at the same time. So we can get about 3 different things communicating. That's, or more, whatever the case may be. The thing is, just remember, the more you put on that radio wave, the more you take down its amplitude, and its quality comes poor at the end on whatever side. Trunking systems. Trunking systems are actually pretty cool. The idea of a trunking, an 800, 900 megahertz trunking system is pretty much is I get on the radio, I click, it's going to find whatever, it's going to find, between the, 800, 900, like find a channel, whatever the case may be, and it's going to relay it back to you. Then when you click, you could be on a completely different channel relaying back to me. So there's always a new channel always being used and circled through all the time with everybody who's using the radio. So not one frequency or one line gets tied up. So that's really the big benefits there. And like a computer routes messages to first available frequency. Like I said, we're just looking for the first channel. Boom, send it out. Same thing when it comes back. First channel. Boom, send it back.
So those are all like simplex then, like. It
General,
just finds one, you send it, and then it'll find another one, and just it's a one-way street, just
yeah, it's
going
just,
at high speed.
yeah, it's just looking for a
Right.
one-way street, whoever it is. And I mean, we could put out, let's say there's 20 of them, and I've got 10 people out here, one person out here. We could be all using all different 20 of them at different times talking. Digital communications. This is the old MDT. Here's the MDC. Basically, it's just a laptop in the truck. That's all it is. So EKG singles into digital codes, 1s and 2s. That's a nice way of saying what they call the term binary. If you guys computer literate, that's binary. Everything's always 1s and 2s. Or,
Zeros and ones.
Zeros and ones. Yeah, that too. Sorry, I'm getting over a little infection. Yeah. So anyway, condenses messages, easy frequency overcrowding, and the problem is actually with a lot of these communications that because if they are public frequency, people are listening, and especially if they're digital and it's public, people want to get in there and see what's going on. People are just especially media people, if they can get in there and find out what's going on, they'll love to do that. So. But again, the idea is that, especially if it's kind of a little bit more sensitive information, they don't want to relay over the radio, they'll send it to your MDC and say, did you copy your MDC traffic? And you're like, oh, okay. This could be, something really bad or very gross or something that you don't want the general public to hear for whatever reason. Like I said, there are people, like I said, that, listen to fire scanners, police scanners, EMS scanners. That's just what they do. So. Okay, system components here. Base station, basically, like I said, it's fixed. It's or sometimes referred to as the dispatch center. You have a dispatcher. Actually, you can use, say, a hospital. If it has a fixed radio, that's their base station. So basically, geography, terrain, influence, installation. We're always trying to get the highest point available. Or they put a very, very large antenna to compensate, one of the two. So close to a geographical center of the area served as possible. We don't want this in the middle of nowhere, especially if you have multi-agencies coming in. We want to kind of get it a little bit more centralized as possible. Usually about 45 to 75 watts of output. Some multi-channel base can receive all channels simultaneously, but only transmit one at a time. Like I said, if we start going that digital trunking, that's happening all the time, just bouncing all over the place, cycling through. So, mobile transmitters and receivers, pretty much just like saying, this is what we got in your trucks. So obviously it decreases range of mountainous area due to and with large buildings. Basically, it's just something that can interfere within the signal. We interfere with the signal, you're not going to get it, or you might get a very weak version of it. So basically, you want to be able to physically see it. Ideally, you want to have that straight, clear line, no physical barriers in the way. A lot of the actual digital trunking has gotten really, really good. They've actually overcome a lot of that. Because they'll sit there and test it, and it's like, oh yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Playing that kind of game, and except they're way out and they're like, wait a minute, I can barely even see over the rock here. Portable transmitter receivers, obviously your handhelds. So basically we just want to walk away from our vehicle, limited range. Some of these are actually good enough. Like I said, sometimes these will actually transmit and they'll go to the actual back to the truck for repeater. And we'll talk about repeater in a minute. And then they'll go out and either back to the station or hit another repeater. But some of these handhelds actually won't even do that. They'll just go straight out either to the base station or to the repeater itself. So some of these portables can actually be repeaters too, like I said, through the vehicle. And obviously they always want the antenna straight up. If you notice now, a lot of these antennas are about that big, and it's not like the old ones you can't actually stretch out anymore. Finally kind of getting away from that. So repeater is just a nice way of saying, I send a message and I send it to Ethan, and like I said, I want to get back over to John there, but he can't hear me, but I say it to Ethan, then Ethan says it to Russ, and Russ sends it back to John. And that's all a repeater does. It just gives that frequency strength to keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. And repeaters are all over the place. You'll see radio towers just kind of intermittently put everywhere just for that. Satellite receivers. Additional receivers located throughout areas of designed radio coverage. It just depends on what it is. I mean, obviously these are more places that are very, very rural. You're going to have to rely on a satellite receiver on this. And again, it could be repeater, the base station be a repeater by telephone lines, microwave relay, and so forth. But like I said, these are actually kind of rare. I wouldn't say that. But yeah, these are kind of more, like I said, think of more rural areas. Obviously, because we don't have a whole system of repeaters and base stations already put up, so we rely on satellite. Remote consoles, just control console at that point. Again, remote locations, just depends on what it is. That's, like I said, just by the term itself, remote location, remote console. Decoders and encoders. This is what was kind of really good about the 800 and 900 digital trunking. Because we don't want people to really hear our conversations sometimes, they'll put encoders and decoders in, so that signal actually gets scrambled. Then when it reaches the actual destination, then it gets decoded and said, okay, now I can hear exactly what you're saying. If you ever want to see something kind of interesting, if you ever guys are out in radios and you'll talk to each other, click, and you'll have a little bit of a delay, even though your person's right next to you. That's because one, it's looping around, and two, it's being decoded and encoded and decoded at the same time. So you kind of get that little space in there. It doesn't keep people from listening if they want to, but it keeps them from having to listen if they choose not to. If people, obviously, in our age, if people want, especially when it comes to computers, people want to figure a way to decode it. They're going to figure a way to decode it. But ideally, we just don't want to broadcast sensitive information or patient information. Ideally, a lot of times when you patch into the hospital, that should be all decoded and encoded. Some places may still have the actual decoded and encoded channels. And actually, when you try to get in touch with that hospital, you have to hit in a code, and then it opens up that line for you. But then we know it's a secure line. Then you can transmit. Dispatch center of the future. Well, not really the future. Obviously, yeah, pretty much now. Cell phones. Obviously, cell phones are a really, really good thing, especially when talking to hospitals. Radios are not. Sometimes cell phones are a lot more reliable than radios. It just, you seem like you can get just a better transmission, just in general. Faxes, depends on what it is kind of you're doing. Computer charting, that's a really, really big thing a lot of people are gone to. It's actually, it's more accurate. They actually found out that some places there's actually a 30% decrease of productivity, but but you can gear it to 100% accuracy. In other words, chart doesn't get submitted until all certain fields are put in, all data is put in, and so forth. So a lot of those people say, well, we'll take that 30% decrease of productivity just so we get this accurate information for whatever the case may be. Audio visual transmission from the ambulances. Some ambulances actually have little, we call them little spy cameras, but we'd actually have them in the back. I mean, sometimes they were good, especially if you have an ambulance with a detached cab. That's really good because one, you want to see what's going on back there, and especially if you have somebody getting kind of squirrely, hit record. That kind of protects you there. But sometimes, I think they've kind of gone back and forth on whether, well, let's put it this way. I know, like Round Rock, their fire departments, they have kind of this little intranet, and they actually can pull up a little camera, and you can see all the crews, or whoever it is can see all the crews. And some radios, people have radios where they can kind of just listen in and not let you know. They can do the same thing with, like, over at Round Rock. They can turn on that camera and watch you, and you're not knowing it. So there's kind of goods and bads. It's kind of like you have to you don't have as much privacy as you think. So, automatic vehicle locators, AVL, that term keeps showing up, doesn't it? Or GPS, great things. Those are, or actually good and bad things. It's good when you need help and you need somebody to come find you. It's bad when you're trying to stay hidden. So, using mobile transmitter receiver. Big thing here is they're going to say know what to say before you say it. Okay? Just take a couple seconds, think about what it is you're going to say before you say it. I always kind of think about kind of like text messaging. You kind of read something, you're like, I wonder if I'm going to reply to that immediately. Then I kind of think about how you want to respond to that. Never transmit without monitoring the frequency first. The last thing you want to do is run over somebody who's having emergency traffic. It's, kind of poor form. Wait at least 1 second after keying before talking. Basically, so now the channel's open because you can hit the key it up. Doesn't mean the channel's open, and then you might actually only catch half the message on the other side. Identify yourself on every transmission. Okay, not every time you key the radio, but every time you transmission. The FEMA prefers that you kind of use a "Hey you, it's me" designation. So, dispatch, medic 3. Then you'll hear like, medic 3, go ahead. But they always want to try and keep that. FEMA was trying to push to trying to keep that uniform, and then you can begin your conversation at that point. Speak at close range, 2 to 3 inches into the microphone. Don't yell. At the same time, don't whisper. Use a normal conversation in tone and speed. And if you ever want to hear something interesting, if you ever get a chance, when you have a very intense call, see if you can actually pull the tape and listen to yourself, because you think you're being normal and you're really not. Articulate clearly. Don't mumble. Avoid words or phrases which are easily misunderstood. You don't want to say like funky and make somebody on the other side think you're saying something else besides funky, just to let you know. Avoid letting your voice trail off at the sentence. Basically, you just really want to be clear and to the point. Okay, this isn't, use English, be straight to the point. You're not there to have a chit chat. And I mean, some people love being on the radio. And that's just one of those things, just cut them off, really, just because you want that line open and free for something that's really important, or free for somebody else who might need it. This isn't the place to chit-chat and talk about, what tree you passed and go around this, this, and hey, you came in the door, nobody cares. So, please and thank you. Some people, it depends on where you go. Some people they'll say no, and some people say it's okay. Sometimes they'll have their own, they'll sit there and say, receive, direct, copy that. Everybody has their own little ways of acknowledging it, so just kind of keep that in mind. Don't show emotion, don't curse, don't vocalize pauses. In other words, like I said, this isn't a conversation, especially if you get in an argument with a dispatcher and you're trying to have a spitting match with him over the radio. It's a lose-lose situation on both sides. Believe me. I know very well. Do not unkey your microphone until you finish talking. And that's actually the thing with that. Make sure when you're playing with your radio, you want to hear a really funny story. Okay. So this guy, we're sitting inside. Did I tell you about the St. David's and the guy keying his radio? I didn't tell you? Okay. So we're in St. David's one day, and I'm sitting there, we're talking in a little break room. If you've ever been to the St. David's break room, they have an awesome break room. The coffee machine, it's always fresh coffee. It's great. You know, they always have cookies and stuff. So anyway, we're sitting there one day, and, you know, I don't know what day it was, but we're just talking and this, that, and the other. And I remember this guy, I was like, well, where's your partner? You know, his name was Jason. He's like, he's out in the truck. I think he's talking to his wife or something, you know. Normal, this, that, you know, kind of thing. So we're just sitting there chit-chatting. Well, what a lot of people, for whatever reason, like they do, they like to sit there and use the headsets and stick their phone and to hold the headset. Well, keep in mind, there's a little button here. If you click the button, you transmit. Well, anyway, this guy is in the back of the truck. Well, he's sitting there, and I guess what happened was he did this. And he is going off about his partner. And he's like, yeah, da-da-da-da-da, I can't stand this guy, da-da-da. And we're all looking at each other. This guy's like, I thought we were getting along. What's going on here? And we're just like, and Elsie comes in and we're like, dude, what happened?
Sucks for the rest of the day.
A long 24-hour shift. That's what it is.
Yeah, it makes a very long. So yeah, just keep in mind on how you're keying things. In fact, you know, back in the day, one of the jokes we used to play with each other is like we would, you know, people would come in, they might turn their truck off or something, especially at night, because people would be like, yeah, medics and such were clear, or, you know, medics 720 were clear. They wouldn't even just put it down. Well, we would tape it, because we figure you may not be paying attention. You'll come in, you'll say something, you'll down, and then we'll listen to you talk. And, you know, you don't want to say, you know, there's been a couple in situations where like, you know, hey, supervisor's coming out, you're out of service right now, so just remember that. And all that stuff gets recorded, so just be very remember, it's, you just mind your manners on that. Communicate information to the receiving facility. It should be brief, pertinent to status, and we don't want to have any kind of patient identifiers, especially even if it's regulars. You know, like one individual keyed over the radio. Yeah, we're coming in individual, you know, such and such, who happens to be smelling of ETOH and also happens to be an amputated right leg. We all know who that was. You don't want to get into that kind of thing. The big thing with transmitting information, I mean, I'll put a real quick, easy way to do it. But I mean, it's pretty much, you want to identify who you are. You want to know how fast you're coming. You know, emergent or non-emergent. Okay. I don't try to get into, I know everybody, you know, because everybody will have, like, some places have code 3, some people have priority 1, priority 2. You know, I don't know who's on the other side of the hospital. I'll just tell them coming in emergent or non-emergent. I think that's enough right there. You know, you come in and say, okay, we're inbound, non-emergent, age of the person, you know, 22-year-old male, complaining of, or whatever the situation is, 22-year-old male, or approximately 20-year-old male in 20s, or however you want to put that, altered mentation, cardiac arrest. You always want to put the big stuff up front. Put the big stuff up front, you know. So, like I said, if they're having chest pain, they're having chest pain, but if they're sitting there saying, yeah, having chest pain, and they're going into runs of VFib, having chest pain, you know, complaining of chest pain, or actually having runs of VFib secondary to complaining of chest pain. Put always the big stuff up front, and then you can follow it up with what's behind it, okay? You might want to give, you know, just a very quick, synopsis of what's going on, you know, you could sit there, say 50-year-old male having runs of VTAC, secondary complaining of chest pain for 2 hours. Patient is alert and oriented, you know, mentation right there. Get the mentation, alert and oriented, ANO times 4, or CAO times 3 was one I always use, or GCS 15 at this time. Patients, if you have any pertinent interventions, that's a good time to bring it up. A lot of times they don't care if they're on oxygen or if they have an IV. If they're usually asking that, usually one, it's a new nurse, or two, they're just kind of being sticklers because you're probably rambling on your report. So, you know, if it's a medication, say, hey, look, you know, give them 3 nitros to, you know, 150 of fentanyl with some such effect, you know, 150 of amiodarone, you know, then where I am right now, patient is currently presenting with normal sinus rhythm without ectopy. If they're critical, give their vital signs, okay? Complete set of vital signs. If they're not critical, just say vital signs within normal limits, okay? You don't understand, think at the very most, 30 seconds, okay? Nobody wants to sit and listen. Nobody really wants to sit and listen to you. And the only thing I can tell you this, if you're calling any kind of children's hospital, make sure you have the respiration rate and cap refill. Make sure you include that. And actually, full set of vital signs every time you call into a children's hospital. They're always very sticklers about that. Every children's hospital I've ever been to. But most of, when it comes to adult medicine, like I said, if they're unstable, they're critical, I want to know what they want to know what the big stuff is, because they want to know what room to put them in, what doc to get there, or what intervention they need to get there. They want to know how sick this patient is. If you sit there and say this patient's, if you say, yeah, patient's complaining of chest pain, we give them, a couple nitro, and you coming in and they find out the pressure is, about 70/50, they're going to chew you a new one. So let them know the big stuff. Let them know the big stuff. It's not big stuff. It's like, yeah, it's chest pain, secondary to with productive cough, producing, green sputum, fever chills, times 3 days, vitals, normal limits. Okay, I can work with that. But anything else, like I said, if you start rambling on, you'll start hearing little things like, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? They'll do stuff like that, Like, so just, you want to be straight and to the point every time. A lot of times I'll say, when I do this, I would kind of, before I'd call in, it's like, okay, what exactly am I going to say? Think about what you're going to say before you say it. And then, like I said, it's just one of these things, people get kind of intimidated making radio reports. If you can do this right away when you're out doing your rides, it gets so much easier, because it just doesn't take much. You're kind of like, okay, I'm doing this, okay, wait a minute, change gears, what am I going to say? Okay, give me the radio. La, 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 la. Do you have any questions? No, okay, be there in 5. Click. Job's done right there. So don't diagnose the problem. Like I said, they just want to know if it's chest pain, cardiac arrest, is it nausea, vomiting. This isn't the time to get into details. Kind of with me on that? People really get confused with this, and they'll just write detail, or they'll go on detail. It's like they really don't know. Actually, a fun game to play is if you ever can, you're in the hospital. And you hear somebody coming in, that's actually a good time to get on the radio and actually sit there and say, oh yeah, that's great, send them the triage and see what they do. I did it to a guy, and said, I'm coming in, I'm coming in non-emergent. This guy, he was such and such, broke his arm, we've given him about 150 of fentanyl, da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, send the triage. What? The other one is, especially if they get really long, little chemo, things to know that you're dragging out, they'll get on there and say, what color were the patient's eyes? What sign is the patient? What? Are they a Leo, an Aries? That's that little sign of you probably were going too long, So just keep an eye out for those. Medical terminology, if you know it, big thing with medical terminology, if you know it, use it. If you don't really understand it too well, don't use it. So, repeating orders, for whatever reason, doc gives you an order, even if it's something standard, very simple, repeat the order. It's like, okay, copy that. Such and such milligrams of fentanyl, or fentanyl up to 200 to positive effect, or whatever the case may be. Because understand that's also recorded too. So, yeah, if you are ever uncertain, because it's very hard to hear sometimes out there with all the, especially loud trucks, noise, and all that, say, I need you to repeat. Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? That's obviously you don't want to be caught in the wrong of giving the wrong drug, wrong order for whatever reason. So, do not transmit telemetry continuously. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. The other end's going to be getting paper, unless you really want to. That's an option too. Avoid ongoing transmission. Like I said, anytime you talk on the radio, we want to be short to the point. Short to the point. You want to get in, get out. We don't want to tie up radio time. Think of it that way. Understand when you are calling in, or for whatever reason calling in for drug orders, or you're calling in to somebody. Remember, detailed to the point. You just want to sit there and say, hey, look, this is what's coming in. This is it. This is chest pain, but it looks okay. Or this is chest pain, it's really bad. That's the. Like I said, nobody really wants to get too involved on that. Use a standard format. If you don't use a standard format and you kind of sit there and try to figure out what you're going to say every time, it's kind of hard at first, but after a while you'll kind of get into your own little way of doing it, or whoever you preceptor is, say, hey, just do it like this, and then you just kind of adopt that and you go with it. So, like I said, just it's really just developing a script, and you just plug in the information. Okay, presenting patient information. this is, like I said, when you're talking to, it's like, okay, when you're actually talking to the physician or nurse, and that's when you're saying, hey, this is Brandy, she's 26 years old, she came in today complaining of some nausea and vomiting. She's had it for about 3 weeks. Like I said, you're giving the story, hey, this is who they are, this is how they are, they've had this. Said they tried to take, some Tylenol. She hasn't had much effect with that, and she hasn't been able to hold down any fluids or food at this time. I've given her an IV. I've just given her about 500 of fluid. Just kept her on nasal cannula about 2 liters. Just kind of made her comfortable, and and that's kind of here where there's no meds, no allergies or anything like that. I always hold meds and allergies to last unless it's going to affect something up top wise, okay, within that chief complaint. So, and like I said, that's a script too. And that's just a script too, and you just to kind of develop it. But you want it to be very organized every time when you're coming in, especially with a trauma patient, and you've got about 10 people there, and they're all listening. Because usually the nurse that's recording is in a corner. You've got a couple doctors here. Everybody else is ready to go, and you've got to talk loud and say, okay, 28-year-old male traffic in NBC was found trapped, 6 inches of intrusion into the vehicle, unresponsive at this time. He has got crepitus over at the parietal area of his skull. His neck was already C-collared upon arrival. Breath sounds are unequal at this time. They are diminished on the right with crepitus. Abdomen appears to be soft, non-tender, no distension, no pulses, pressure of this. Nice across the board. Here it is, straight to the point, because they're going to be getting to work. They want to know how bad this is and how quickly they need to get to work. Doctor will be, and if the doctor's right there, he'll be like, okay, what else? Did this happen, So, yeah, don't worry about weight. I kind of just jumped all over that, so yeah, just remember, it's communication. Like I said, honestly, this is all script. It's all script work. And you just got to learn how to just prioritize it, write it, prioritize it, and then you're just going to fill the voids with every patient. Radio patches, this much information in 30 seconds. Talking to physician, nurse, this much information. This is where we put in all the little details of everything that happened. I tripped, fell. They complained of a little itch on their nose, stubbed their toe, was upset, called EMS, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So the last thing here is understand FCC. FCC gives a license to anybody who uses a radio frequency, non-government communications. Understand that, and actually that's kind of really just non-federal communications. Okay, so state and local, they will monitor you. They will monitor you. They'll come in. They'll check your licenses. So they establish the standards, the frequencies, licensed personnel who repair, and again, they're listening too. And once in a while, they'll kind of jump in and listen, and they can come in and do random audits and say, okay, start pulling your tape on, because they'll sit there and come and say, pull your tape on this day. We want to hear it. Do you have this information? Because I think you have to keep like all those tapes for like 5 years, or those recordings for like 5 years. Then come in and say, okay, at 4 years on April, 40 years ago, pull up this tape. Oh, I want to hear the recordings that have between 3 and 10. Any questions? Take a break.